I'm Connor and welcome to another episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. Today we're going to be looking at an acclaimed director who I think deserves a little more attention, and that is Ridley Scott. He has an upcoming movie this weekend, actually probably tomorrow, because I'll be filming this on the Thursday. Alien Covenant. Now I'm pretty interested to see this movie. I wasn't a huge fan of Prometheus, but I'm a big fan of Alien and Aliens, and even Aliens 3. And I think that what he's doing with the sort of alien genre will be super interesting, especially because he's trying to continue at this, and actually I think his next project will be a next Alien movie. Not according to IMDb, but what he's sort of been saying, and he looks to be in production within less than a year, so that's very interesting. But the main thing about Ridley Scott, it's similar to actually Guy Ritchie, but this is more of a dramatic sense, where when people talk about the greatest directors of all time, who do they say? They say Kubrick, or Spielberg, or Scorsese, or Hitchcock, and then maybe someone like Francis Ford Coppola even, but they don't really say Ridley Scott, or the Coen brothers, maybe that. But they don't say Ridley Scott, that's the point. However, though, I'm a big fan of him. I never really saw him as this acclaimed director, because as I was growing up, he was sort of making a lot of duds, but as you see sort of more recently, and in the past, he's a really great director, and has made some seminal movies throughout his long career. And he's made some duds, but he really is a fantastic director, and he's definitely done a lot to the sci-fi genre, a genre I hold near and dear to my heart, and something that I really respect about him for sure. Anyways, guys, if you're new to the series, every single week what I do is I break down a director and I talk about what makes them great. That's the central topic. But I also talk about what makes them great, what makes them unique, why they've succeeded, or why they failed in some scenarios, and then also I talk about their best, and then what my favorite is. I might actually be starting to add a new thing, and sort of a new element in it, and that is underrated, just so I can talk about a little more films, maybe lengthen out the episodes a little bit later, a little bit longer. I'm going to implement it this week, incorporating an underrated, and we'll talk, not too long about all the movies, but still giving sort of a reason why I think they're underrated, or why I think this is best, or why this one movie is my favorite. Just gets me to talk about a little more movies in his sort of film genre, which is interesting, but they might lap up. My favorite might be the best, which might be the most underrated, who knows, but mostly I just really hope you guys like the video. Comment below, let me know what you think, subscribe to the channel, and anyways, let's start right into it. So when I think of Ridley Scott, I definitely think of sort of an underrated director, but I also think of genre, similar to Kubrick, like we did. When did we do Kubrick? Oh no, Kubrick is next week, actually. I'll be posting that next week, just filmed that recently. What he's so great about is genres. Ridley Scott, he's been able to tackle the historical epic drama in Gladiator, and nail it, or even something like Kingdom of Heaven and Exodus, Gods and Kings. But then also like Thelma and Louise, the road movie, he does it and he nails it. Even sci-fi, Alien or Blade Runner. Alien's a horror movie and he nails it. So even sci-fi with Blade Runner, or Blade Runner really is like a noir movie. So he's really been able to hit sort of these seminal genres like a Kubrick, and really have some of the best movies in their respective genres. So he's definitely like a guy like Rob Reiner or Kubrick, who's been able to do that really well. And like all those directors, because he works in so many different genres, he definitely doesn't have a distinct style. You can have a Coen Brothers movie in every genre, and they have comedies and dramas, but there's always that Coen Brothers signature dialogue and the signature characters, and you can always tell it's a Coen Brothers movie. Same with the Wes Anderson, even more so with that visual style. But Ridley Scott doesn't really show himself too much in his movies. The main thing, a couple of main things I like to see, that if you look close enough, you can actually tell the Ridley Scott movies. The dialogue, it's almost operatic is what I found. It's not very necessarily relatable or anything like that. It's very much like meaning behind the words, and they're very deep in a sense. But that's because he doesn't write his own movies. I don't think he's written any of his movies, and he just directs them. And that says a lot for a guy who has like 100 or whatever directing credits, or just an incredible amount. And he doesn't write any of them. He uses great adaptations and really worries about sort of the visuals of it, similar to Stanley Kubrick, who we'll be talking about. Stanley Kubrick, which we'll be looking at next week. Another thing I want to point out is that if you look hard enough, there's a lot of violence. He definitely tends to do violent movies, definitely R-rated. Some sort of violence, whether it be blood or just like action in a sense. And another one is his long run times. A lot of his movies are 2.5 hours, Sometimes they're 3 hours. There's rare ones like Black Rain, which is 2 hours, but it's definitely longer in a sense, and he definitely makes sort of epic movies, especially later on in his career. Ever since Gladiator and on, he's been able to make these epic movies. Another thing I want to point out is on IMDb right now, he has 23 projects going on right now, and that just shows how active he is today. He's like 70 something, but he's still making a movie almost consistently, almost every single year since Gladiator, pretty much, and he's just been sort of churning them out. He's had a long-standing career, but why has he sort of created this long-standing career, and why has he been able to do this? It's because he makes entertaining movies. He takes great adaptations and puts them, and really adds a visual style to them. Because he's not like this auteur sort of writer-director, he has to very focus on the visuals and also telling that story. He's very much a director in terms of he's on top, and he tells the cinematographer what he wants, and he tells the writers what he wants, and hopes that everything sort of mishes and max together and just turn out a great product. And a lot of his movies, like you can analyze them, whether it be something like Blade Runner, or you can just look at something like The Martian. It's just like a hell of a lot of fun and just a really solid movie. And I think he's definitely learned a lot and sort of honed his craft over the years, where he makes a very sort of tight movie, not in terms of length, but in terms of just there's not actually a lot of added themes. And then also another theme is characters. He's been able to take big epics like the Crusades in Kingdom of Heaven, or Rome and the Fall of the Roman Empire and Gladiator, and condense them really down into character pieces. And really, if you look at Gladiator, it's about Maximus and I forget the Joaquin Phoenix's character name, but Maximus and Joaquin Phoenix's character name, and just that simple sort of hero's journey revenge tale. But it does it so well and so masterfully, and it works. And actually, I think that's the reason why it won the Best Picture and it got a lot of awards, was because it's simple, but it's very appealing to a lot of people. And that's, I know, a definite favorite for a lot of people. Another one like Kingdom of Heaven is really just about finding yourself. There are some more themes, but it really is about sort of character, and there's action, and there's sort of a little bit of a love romance, but it comments on the history of that time, and even something like Blade Runner is like this huge world building, which is probably the third thing I'll actually move into now, is his world building. I think Ridley Scott's a great job at world building and creating the sense that we're in there and really immersing you into the world, and not saying it's a movie. This is why he does sort of his historical epics, because he can do a lot of research and then make sure that the visuals attach to that research and really make a world that feels lived in. Like, that was one of my favorite parts of Gladiator, was it felt like a world that exists and it was lived in, and nothing was pristine or new, and it was gritty. Even more so Blade Runner, I think, where it was like this incredible world where he created the cyberpunk genre, but he does such a great job at really making it feel like a lived-in world, and like he's taking influence from everywhere else, even though it really is pretty much an original movie, which is quite fantastic. But aside from that, he's working all the time, and of course you have some duds like an Exodus, Gods and Kings, and even though I've sort of talked about Kingdom of Heaven highly, I wasn't a huge fan of it. But that's the thing where you make some movies that work with some that don't, but in the grand scheme of things, you look at his career, Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, even now The Martian, he's consistently making amazing movies, some of the best movies of all time, in Alien and Blade Runner, and even some people would say Gladiator. I know it's a lot of people's favorite movies. It's got like an 8.6 on IMDb. It's got a lot of love and passion and fan group behind that movie, so it really shows that Ridley Scott is a huge filmmaker for a lot of people, and I sort of want to recognize him, because he's not the first person I think of in mind when we did this series. It's number 11 or 12 now. But I still want to do it, and because Alien Covenant's coming out now, it's a great time to show that this guy's a really good guy. So now let's move over into my best, and that is going to be Blade Runner. Now I saw Blade Runner pretty recently, and I saw the final cut, so I just want to warn everyone in terms of which version to watch. I think there's like 7 versions to watch in that movie. There's so many different versions, but the version to watch, I think, and a lot of people think, is the final cut. This is what Ridley Scott did in 2007. It's the only version that he's had complete creative control over, and I really think that if you're going to watch anything, I've only seen this one version, but I've seen it twice, and I really think if you're going to watch it, this is the version to watch, because I sort of get now why everyone says it's such a great movie. I saw this right before the Blade Runner 2049 trailer. came out, but then when it did come out, I was like, oh man, I got so into it. I can't wait for that movie because 2049. I mean, Denis Villeneuve, Arrival is my favorite movie of last year. If you don't know, Prisoners and Enemy and Sicario, these are my favorite movies of the past few years. And then some of his French, his foreign language films, like Incendies or Polytechnique. He's just a fantastic director, and I can't wait to see what he's doing. And I mean, Roger Deakins' cinematography is beautiful, and he should get an Oscar for that. But that's 2049. But that also sort of ties into the Blade Runner, the original, and that is, I talked about a little bit about the world building, but really the visuals. There's not a huge story going on. It's definitely got noir themes, therefore the story isn't like linear in the sense of, oh, you know what's happening, bang, 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 like Gladiator would be. But the main thing is visuals. You just watch this movie and you're mesmerized. You're glued to your seat, at least I was. And I know a lot of people could say, not a lot of people, but some people say like, it's boring, I didn't really get it, but maybe they were checking their phone, maybe they're not. It's definitely one movie that demands your attention, not necessarily in terms of the story, but in the composition of the shots. And I mean that because I know a lot of filmmakers, and cinematographers especially, they have a shot and then they quickly cut away to it to another shot for like 2 seconds. Therefore, they don't have a lot of time to really compose shots. And Ridley Scott then has a really a lot of balls to do this in a sense where he has one shot and he stays there for like 10 seconds and a minimum, and you just really sort of soak in that picture, and you sort of realizing little details and how well it's lit and how it's very much like a painting in a sense. And Blade Runner is just a series of paintings, how beautiful the shots are, how beautiful the worlds are from one to the next to the next to the next. Just incredibly, incredibly beautiful. And even though we have this sort of huge visual thing that you can look at, that was totally unique and totally interesting, and essentially Ridley Scott made that up. You have an incredible character piece and story of Harrison Ford's character Deckard. Because this is very much a noir movie, it's heavily inspired from these noirs, not set in the 40s, but you have a lot of use of shadows and lights and sort of a lonely character, and just all these super interesting things. The concept of the Blade Runner is very interesting, which is essentially like a guy who hunts down sort of replicants who are robots, and if they malfunction or something goes wrong with them, Blade Runners have to go and kill them in a sense. But really, like, there's not necessarily too much to spoil for this movie because it asks so many questions and it makes you really wonder and think. Silence, especially in Arrival, even more so. That's why I think Denis is going to do a good job about that. Is to sort of ask these bigger questions and sort of wonder, keep you thinking. Kubrick is another great director of that, but there's questions asked such as, can we necessarily trust everything we see, or what does it mean to be human? Of course, you have that tale that really started with this in terms of, the android or the robot versus the human, and because the android are so close to humanity, it's like, it does what a great sci-fi movie does, is it creates a sort of otherworldly element, but really that otherworldly element is just a mirror that we hold up to society, and we can sort of reflect on it. Someone like Planet of the Apes does a great job about that, to take that sci-fi element, but really talk about sort of racism in that period of time. And Arrival really talked about unity and how our world sort of is interconnected, but we're still spreading away, and we're creating signs, and really about that unity. And Blade Runner, asks so many questions, and that isn't really, I know other questions that I'm not going to ask because I don't want you to sort of have your judgment mixed up if you haven't seen it before, but you can ask totally different questions and take it in a totally different way. It's definitely ambiguous, and that's why one of the versions there's actually narration, and it tells you what to think, but really that's very much like one note, and the studio wrote it, so it's not really Scott's vision. So if you have to see it with the narration, don't see it with the narration, see it without it, the final cut that is. Another thing I want to say is just the score. This was done by Vangelis, and it really has that techno theme to it because of the cyberpunk genre, and because of the sort of cyberpunk setting, he creates the music to be very claustrophobic. So you have the setting, which is very much like in Chinatown-esque of the future, actually in 2019. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of neon signs, there's not a lot of room to move, and that's sort of like how the music is. It's very techno, but it's very like claustrophobic in a sense, and very simple, and it really draws you into the movie and really immerses you into that, which, this is why I think is his best, just because it does what Ridley Scott's great at, which is world building and an iconic role in an iconic role by Harrison Ford, and in an iconic world done by Ridley Scott with iconic music by Vangelis. Just the sort of combination of incredible shots and composition all coming together with these deeper themes that you really look and analyze and ask questions for yourself. With sort of a weird ending and one of the best monologues of all time, Tears in Rain. If you haven't, just check that out on YouTube, if anything. And it could be very much my favorite, but I saw it recently and it's sort of growing on me. And I also want to talk about my favorite because it's definitely easily a favorite. So let's move over to that. And my favorite is The Martian. Man, do I love this movie. It was my favorite movie of 2015. I see a lot of similarity between that and 2016's Arrival, my other favorite movie of the year, in terms of having that sense of themes of unity and bringing together and working together, we can get stuff done, and the power of space in a sense, and that's what it was all about. It was, in 1968, JFK said, "We're going to the moon, we're beating the Russians to the moon," and he didn't talk to NASA or anything. We didn't even know if we were close. But he said, "We're going to do it," and he put a bunch of money into NASA, and they really were on that sort of time and budget to send someone to the moon, and they ended up doing it with Apollo 11. An incredible story of just like, when you put your mind to stuff, you can do it, and that's, I think, is a great tale to show right now in 2015, especially because, NASA and all these guys haven't got the funding they need, and that's why we see Elon Musk's company like SpaceX start to rise and actually show that, hey, like, we can do this, and a private company I think is going to go to the moon first, and then NASA's going to be like, oh shoot, and the government's going to be like, we need to put money because these guys are beating us, and the Chinese are going to beat us, and we're going to see that sort of repeat in a sense, but they're going to have to get bit in the ass first, which sort of sucks. But go back to The Martian. What really carries this movie, I think, is Matt Damon and his performance. He's one of my favorite actors, and just be able to carry a movie. He's on the, a lot of people say this is Castaway in space, and Tom Hanks is a fantastic actor, 2-time Academy Award winning, and really, The Martian does a better job, I think, of Castaway than Castaway does. It has the rescue mission part, but it also has him by himself on space, and to be able to carry scenes and carry half the movie, in a sense, by yourself, really not communicating with anybody. If you don't know the plot of The Martian, astronaut gets straight onto Mars and they need to bring him back, and there's definitely a lot of questions asked, like, is there a public relations issue? Can we just save just one guy? We have to spend a lot of money to save this one guy. Yeah, but everyone's watching, so it's a lot of pressure. There's deadlines we have to meet, throughout the movie, and there's trials and tribulations, and there's thriller, and there's comedic and it's dramatic, and just Matt Damon's performance to carry that is so funny. It also has a great soundtrack, similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, using disco music to sort of work in with the plot and with the characters, not just inserting it like Suicide Squad that has nothing to do with the movie, and actually works in it, and he comments on it, and it was designed from it. I also want to point out Drew Goddard. He's a screenwriter for this movie. He did an incredible job adapting the screenplay, adapting the book into a screenplay. I read the book before the movie, and I was a huge fan of the book, and I couldn't wait. I saw Martian day one, and I was just blown away by it. And it's just such a fun time in the theaters, and Drew Goddard does a great job at taking this sort of dense book with a lot of math and science, with also a lot of humor in it, and taking that and putting it into a 2-hour movie that makes sense. Fantastic. And not only is The Martian, in terms of the space, in terms of Matt Damon's part, is good, but also the rescue mission is super interesting with a great ensemble cast. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Donald Glover, Jeff Daniels, Kristen Wiig, really just incredible sort of. Oh, Mackenzie Davis, I think, is in it too. Incredible amount of people and a great ensemble. Got nominated for 9 Academy Awards. I don't think I've won one actually. Oh no, now I'm showing my Oscar knowledge again for old Oscar countdown fans, but. Anyways, that doesn't matter because Martian is a fantastic movie, one of my favorites of the year, and I really would recommend it to anybody because even my sister, she was not a fan of space or space movies, but she saw this and she was like, wow, I was really blown away with it. And I know a lot of people, and she's not the only one, but said hey, is this a real story? Did we actually do this? And it's like, oh no, we haven't been to Mars before, but it's so real. It grounds it in reality. It's not like this highfalutin science stuff. It's very much simple, and the way the script explains it, how Matt Damon delivers those lines, makes the science very easy to understand. Unlike something like an Interstellar, which is very complex and hard to wrap your head around, you can watch this one time and walk out and be like, that's such a fun movie, I love it. And everyone I talk to loves The Martian. So if you haven't seen it, go check it. Go check it out. It's on Netflix. Highly recommend that one. And I just love it. It's my favorite because it's just instantly rewatchable and just so much fun. It's a lot of fun. Great blockbuster. And then just I want to point out an underrated movie, which would be American Gangster. It's a solid movie. It's similar to Heat, where you have these two big powerhouses in Russell Crowe, in Denzel Washington, and their sort of battle between back and forth between crook and criminal, and sort of the rise of the criminal and how Russell Crowe has to sort of take him down. Typical sort of a police sort of movie and gangster movie, but it totally nails it with incredible performances from Denzel and Russell Crowe. One of the great gangster movies, and that's an incredible genre. But I really do believe that it's a really underrated movie. So if you haven't seen American Gangster, go check it out. It's a lot of fun too, and not as fun as like say The Martian, which is like funny and stuff, but it's very enthralling and engrossing, and you really get into the world. And it's a gangster movie, so it's sort of the violence and the rise to power is a lot of fun. It's typical, but it works. Anyways, guys, for all those reasons, that's why Ridley Scott is a master of controlled chaos, incredible world building. Just an incredible director, taking other people's works and translating that onto the screen. I haven't even talked about Alien, one of the best horror movies of all time. A great sci-fi horror movie. Jaws in space with a great tagline, "In space, no one can hear you scream." And he's also a really great, moving on from Alien, has a great female protagonist in Ellen Ripley. And then also a movie like Thelma and Louise, with having these two really great feminist sort of powers. And I say that because the movie was a very feminist first time, in terms of they don't take a crap from nobody and they do what they want, and very empowering female leads that we should see, and we haven't seen a lot of it, to be frank. But he does a really great job with that, and even though he has some duds, he's a fantastic director. You should check out his movies, even some of his old ones like Black Rain, like The Duelist, which I haven't talked too much about, but are great movies. That's it, guys. Anyways, make sure you like the video, comment below. I'd love to hear your favorite Ridley Scott movie. Maybe have you seen Blade or have you not? How about The Martian? I know a lot of people saw it. Did you like it? Did you get the hype? I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, guys, my name's Connor Roll. This has been Masters of Controlled Chaos, and until next time, stay tuned.